I'm in the scene view right now, as opposed to things like game view tab. Bring scene forward. And they give you some default objects. There's kind of a construction scene as an example. You can see the objects actually listed under hierarchy. So you can see the example assets if I toggle that open, and also things like camera and light to help us. And I want to explain that you can create more than one scene. Like up here, I see sample scene listed, and large games or large projects might have multiple scenes. They might have things like one scene to contain the objects for the opening. They might have another scene for the first level of the game. So you could say that a scene is kind of like a container of objects. I'm thinking for your projects where you're creating a world, most of you will probably just need one scene for the project. But I want you to learn a little bit more about Unity and the idea that it can be structured into sections. And one other reason to have sections is that you might load in scenes gradually in a project to help it process faster in a game. Just for example, something like Grand Theft Auto is actually loading and unloading chunks in the world as you're moving around. It's more efficient than having like the entire environment loaded at one time because it's so complex. And those chunks are actually scenes. They're separate and designed to be connected to each other. And again, in your projects, probably one scene will be enough. Now, instead of the sample scene, let's start to make a new scene of your own. And that way you can see that you can work with multiple scenes or multiple sections. So right up under File, I'll pick New Scene. And then I'm going to use the basic 3D scene. This is sort of like a template. And I think this is a good one for 3D worlds. So you just choose that and hit Create. And then up in the Hierarchy panel, in the upper left, it's untitled by default. And it just has at the moment two elements, main camera and directional light. We're going to start to add more objects to this in a second and go into creating game objects. But let me stick first on this idea that you can have multiple scenes. And there's a little menu here to the right of Untitled that looks like 3 dots. So I'm going to click there and choose Save Scene. And then I'm going to place it into the Scenes folder in the project assets. And then I can name it what I want. I'm going to call this one Scene 2. And I see the sample scene with the construction site objects is stored there also. So in that structure generated by Unity, it's good to notice it's inside assets, inside scenes. And then I want to also point out that you can see this structure by looking in the assets panel at the bottom here, where they're kind of visualizing some of the separate folders that exist physically under assets in your project folder. And you can open up scenes. You can double click to open folders, and you can see an icon for each scene. And you're just viewing one scene at a time, but you can double click to open a scene quickly. So for example, I just went back to the sample scene with the construction objects by double clicking to open it. And then I think I'll go back to scene 2 that I just created. It's empty. So I'll double click that one. And I'll remind you that I also was finding kind of menu related to scenes just to the right of the scene name. You can now see scene 2. It makes more sense. I'm seeing which scene name is open right there. And that's where we found the save scene. So again, that's going to be a way in real projects to break a game down into chunks. And each scene is only processing kind of one at a time while people play the game. And you can think of these scenes as containers for objects. By the way, to get back to viewing other assets down here at the bottom panel, you can see scenes is open. You see the word assets to the left. Just click there to go up a level and go back to assets. So for example, if I open any of these folders, like scripts, I can click assets to return in this panel to viewing all of them in this little section. And then the next step we'll go to is adding game components, game objects into our new scene.